Well,
Wicked.
three,
Three,
two,
two,
one.
one. Welcome to 4thGen. We are back. It's 2020, and we're kind of like
Back in business.
starting to clean, back in business, getting things rocking and rolling all over again. We've had a crazy, 2020 start.
It's insane.
Like there's
It's
just so much has happened.
It's
right out the flipping
right out of the
gate.
gate. It's it's everything. Let's just throw everything at everything.
Like we were on day 4, and we had a massive tragedy with the plane being shot down, the Iran incident.
Yeah.
Day 4, right?
Yeah.
I think it was January 4th, January 5th.
Something like that.
So right out the gate,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we've been doing this entire impeachment thing with Trump.
Yep.
And
And then it ended.
then it ended.
Crazy.
Somewhat anticlimactic. So right out the-
Predictable and anticlimactic.
right? Then
Yeah.
we get a potentially deadly virus.
Pandemic.
Pandemic.
Yeah.
Starting to hasn't quite swept across, but it's we've to our best efforts have been able to control it to a certain degree.
To a degree that, again, like
For
it's
minimal
just,
casualties,
I think
guess.
I think it's blown the lid off of how completely unreliable any type of news reporting is, because either there's no way to know if it's way less serious than they're making it out to be, because they're trying to be a little bit sort of sensationalist to get some eyes on it, or if it's way worse than they're thinking.
Well, and that's a good point, because I mean, with news reporting, especially in China,
Well, yeah,
you can't rely on
No.
on anything, and it seems like, I mean, depending on the reports you read and the stories you hear, it depends on kind of where the whose side you're looking at it from. Like, if the report's true that the doctor, the first whistleblower, went out there and blew that whistle in September of last year,
Yeah.
and they told him, shut your mouth, you're
Yes.
fear-mongering and rumor spreading, and then it turns into this. It's like, okay, was there an agenda behind this? And then now there's like things where it's like, oh no, it's man-made. It's not a natural
I don't know about
virus.
that. Yeah.
So
I don't
what do
know
you
about that.
believe?
Yeah.
It's just all over the place.
Yeah.
Again, 4thGen, we're going to question.
And we're gonna
everything.
we're not gonna get to the bottom. Well, we're trying to get
We're
to the
gonna try
bottom.
and get to the bottom.
But I mean, like it's just.
And then there's
just
this young
nothing
reporter that's gone missing, who was hopped a train the second he heard about this stuff, went in there, he was sending back cell phone footage.
Yeah.
I watched like a 20-minute video with him. It wasn't subtitled either, so it was just him speaking, but he was showing pictures that he's collected from his phone.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy cripes, like things are pretty. That looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
The aerial footage, you see the drone footage. of Wuhan?
Yeah.
And it
It's
looked
insane.
it looked like a scene out of
Like a Roland Emmerich movie.
yeah,
Like just
yeah,
like the end of the world
end
type
of the
stuff.
world, or like someone said, like what was the one with Will Smith there, not zombie, but where Will Smith is trapped on the island of Manhattan, and it's all desolate, there's nobody there.
Oh,
Why
I
can't
Am
think of-
Legend.
I Am Legend.
Yeah.
It's like an I Am Legend scene, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, damn, like,
But I think it sort of goes to, and like now there's reports that like, I mean, the Chinese government's was going door to door and like pulling people out of their homes and sending them to these essentially like
camps,
concentration camps,
yeah.
and waiting for them to either croak or
Yeah.
kind of prove that they're not infected. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then you put them in these camps and like, well, they're going to get infected if they're not. So it's like, it's almost like,
and there's people like that are on these cruise ships.
yeah,
And they're saying like all you're doing, it's like an incubator for the virus. They're like, you've just like locked us all in this one place.
Yeah.
I guess one cruise ship just got let go yesterday. They landed in was it Singapore? I can't remember now, but they were on that ship for like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And every country was turning them away. They were
Yeah.
trying to port, and they're like, no, you can't port here.
Yeah.
And then finally one of the other countries said, yeah, come on in. And even the prime minister was like down there. The prime minister of that country was down there and like accepting them in and being like, yeah, like, and they were so thankful. But they said like the entire experience, like that particular cruise ship, the entire experience was very like they took care of them really well. So there is some humanitarian,
well, I don't know,
people for humanity, I guess, out there. But what a messed up, like just so much stuff happening in such an insanely short amount of time.
Yep.
Haven't really heard much about the Iran incident since it's happened.
Well, in a weird, so weird, not World War III as it turns out.
Right. I know it went from like 0 to 100
and then back to zero.
It happened and back to zero.
Well, which is what people who understand how understand how foreign policy works and understand how, that's exactly like what it was never going to get to a point that people.
I don't think we could. I mean, we could never, because of the day and age and the technology, we could never afford a World War III. Like if it got to a world war scenario, it's going to be all fought politically now, or politically and economically. Yeah. There's no way that it would ever get to.
And the reality is too. I mean, you're dealing with. There's a certain level of, even in the sort of most corrupt governments, like even in the Iranian government, it doesn't matter how horrible they are to their people. Yeah, there's always a certain amount of sort of self-preservation involved. So it doesn't, it's never like the only people who suffer are their citizens, essentially. Yeah. I mean, no matter what. So, the Canadians, Americans, they're never in real any harm's way.
Right.
It's always the dictators' citizens that.
Well, and I think nowadays, and I know this is crazy to think, maybe it's crazy to think, I think warfare now is fought like James Bond. Like it's all behind the scenes.
It's all behind the
covert stuff. It's mini assassinations here, taking this political leader or business operator out and putting someone else in that they can control. It's more. I think there is a war going on. I just think we just don't see it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's happening all the time,
and I think and people are a little bit ignorant to that fact. For sure. So you walk along, you travel, like just me, anybody. You just travel around, like get on planes, get in cars, drive across the border, coastlines. I mean, the sheer amount of sort of unprotected, sort of lax security that we enjoy in North America. If there was even 250 people whose their sole mission was to let's try to like kill North Americans however we can. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's entire organizations that spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week trying to stop these people. Yeah. Because otherwise quite frankly, there'd be shit blowing up every day. Because like really, you take a suitcase filled with explosives or ball bearings or whatever you want, and you can go anywhere. You can do anything. You can just leave it you can leave it anywhere.
It's simpler than that.
It's way simpler. You know what I mean? Like you get in a car.
A bomb is something you got to build and construct. Yeah. Yeah, like we were talking to a gentleman not too long ago that knew a little bit about like the back end of black markets and stuff like that, and just kind of his understanding of it, and like the stockpile of like Agent Orange and like anthrax and stuff like that
you could get a hold of.
You can get a hold of, and the simplicity it would be to. I'm not giving anybody ideas, but the simplicity to drop that into an air duct system of a building, or into a water supply, or things like that is like mentally fathomable. Like it can happen. Yeah, like it's just
so the fact that it doesn't, right? It's like, well, then clearly there's people just running around all over the world trying to find and stop these people. Yeah. So it's kind of like. I mean, so whenever people get a little bit defensive about sort of drone strikes and preemptively taking out targets, and I mean, at the end of the day, like that's what what I mean? Somebody else is taking care of that for you. Yep. Somebody else is making it so that you can, and I don't agree with foreign intervention and sort of like the U.S. maybe has gotten a little bit over the last 30, 40 years, like overzealous with protecting their oil interests and putting their nose in other people's. But on the terrorism side of things, like that's what it takes to keep sort of like, quite frankly, keep your sort of boot on the neck of those people. Yep. Because we're just a giant piece of land that it's so easy to come and go.
Well, and it's funny,
the freedom we
like,
enjoy.
how you were saying, like, we get on planes, we get on vehicles, and we travel, and that's not just across our own country. Like, I mean, for you to go to, like, London or Thailand or Japan or China or whatever, it's relatively easy.
Yeah.
And if you're like if you're just an average Joe, like, you can afford it.
Yeah.
It's easy to travel, like, it's
to get anywhere,
and it's somewhat risk free. Like, when you look at the incidence of mass problems, like where say it's a guy driving a vehicle down a sidewalk, and plowing.
But that's
people, right?
it's very
very rare.
Yes,
very and we as human beings tend to just it's World War III because of one thing, and it's social media spreads that so fast, and buzzwords, and people are so quick to jump on buzz.
Oh my God! Like the I love the quid pro quo. Nobody ever even knew what that was, and then now it's just kablooey.
It's everywhere, right?
Exactly.
And the media ran with it, and like I remember, because I didn't really know what had happened about the Iran airstrike or the Iran incident until like 2 or 3 days later. Yet I was seeing it all over TikTok, where it was like World War III.
Yeah.
Oh, I just found out I could be drafted. Blah blah blah. And I was new to TikTok at that time, and I was kind of like, what the hell?
Yeah, you're too old for TikTok.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell are these kids talking about, right? And then Monday rolled around, and I just I usually don't watch the news over the weekends and stuff. And then Monday, Tuesday kind of rolled around, and I clicked on the news, and it was like, oh crap, a plane has been shot down. It was, it wasn't intentional, but it was within, Iranian airspace by their own people.
Yeah, of course, obviously. Which I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't want to toot my own horn, but people can check my social media if they want. I called that the day it happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, those stupid Iranians shot it down by accident, because that's exactly what. It was a perfect storm. And it's like, I don't know why they let that plane take off.
Why they were letting any planes take off.
Like, it's like, so we're launching an airstrike against we're launching a missile attack against the United States Air Base.
Let's send people.
Which by the way, they warned.
Yeah.
Through back channels, they warned the. It's such a
It's messy.
So so
messy.
In a weird psychotic way, dictators are funny. Because.
This reminds me of a skit that Bill Burr does, where he's like, "That's what I love about Hitler." And
he's
like, "What?
What?
No, wait, go with
that's
me
right.
on
Let
this.
me finish. Let me finish. Is that they do funny shit, and that was a perfect example of hilarious. So, one of their generals got killed on a terrorism mission in Iraq. They're like, well, we have to show the world that we're like, what's up?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to show the world that, like, we're not going to take that lying down. So we're going to missile attack a U.S. airbase, right? But we can't really piss off the U.S. because they actually will come in and take care of things.
Yeah.
Especially this president, they'll actually take care of things. So what do? Well, we still need to show our news, like our state-run news needs to show that we're shooting these missiles.
Yeah,
they're hitting something.
We can flex.
We can flex. So what do we do? It's like, well, let's accidentally warn the Iraqi government that we're going to attack this base, and then they will probably warn the Americans, and the Americans will probably all leave.
Right.
So we won't kill anybody.
Yeah.
And then we did it, and then it's win-win-win.
Right.
It's like the Americans get to say that they didn't lose a single soldier. We get to say we launched all these missiles, and then everybody just chills.
But like, when you think about, we'll jump really quickly out of this, but when you think about the level of decision making to make those things happen, or like I mean, in my mind, and maybe this is me being over dramatic, but in my mind, launching a missile is not a big deal.
It's a serious thing.
It's a serious thing.
Yeah,
like if you're gonna blow up a $1 million, a couple $1 million base, and I mean, I don't know, just something about that. Like, even just ordering a drone strike is kind of like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like it's a
big
things
decision
that need to be put into place.
Yeah,
and whatnot, right? And it's just it's kind of crazy.
And that's kind of why I don't. That's where the sensationalism comes in, which I'm not a fan. Like, you don't think that there's people there's like game theorists
Yeah.
and like strategists, even at, even the president of the US or a dictator
Yeah.
who's they're just, can be considered, you're looking at the most unhinged people on the planet, like from the outside. But it's like, you don't think they have whole teams figuring all this out and, gaming scenarios, checking
What's the measuring
checking
of, like,
percentages.
Yeah, like is this worth it?
Is it
that
worth
worth
right?
it? Is
Like
this,
the risk to reward ratio. Like, you don't think people that's all they do. Like, there's people.
Okay, so that being said, when the Iranian, Iran said, okay, we're going to bomb this base, but we're going to let the U.S. know, and the U.S. had to make a decision of like, okay, we're going to let it happen. That's
or
right. We're not going to let it happen.
Right.
And then they weigh those consequences.
Yeah, it's a simple calculation of, okay, well, we don't let it happen. Does it cause more trouble for us already? Does it complicate things further?
Yeah.
Or do we let it happen and this thing's all going to it's all, you know what I mean? Like,
man,
it's just
it's
all
like-
it's all there. But the thing is,
Like, this is what you watch in movies. This is
But-
Jason Bourne. This is James Bond.
yeah,
Like, this is
but human beings are so predictable. That's
Yeah.
the funny thing.
just realize something.
Yes.
Jason Bourne, James Bond,
Yeah.
Jack Ryan. How come they all start with J's?
I don't know.
Right?
I suppose.
Conspiracy theory.
They-
Okay, we've covered Iran.
yeah.
All right, moving on. Okay. This damn U.S., I tell you. All right,
There's never a dull moment when they're
Now-
around.
Trump's out. Trump's free and clear.
yeah.
No consequences. Nothing.
Nope.
It doesn't seem like very many people were. I feel like the people that were surprised shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
It seems
It's funny. Okay, so let's go back to I completely misspoke when I said that, well, they have teams of people figuring out like what should go down because
someone's dropped the
somebody
ball on this
somebody
decision.
did yeah, so it's like I said, for me it was the inevitable end
Yeah.
to like a poorly run sort of plan. Like the Dems-
it was definitely seemed half-assed.
It was
definitely
they
seemed-
half-assed it.
It just seemed like it was the whole thing seemed like it was a front.
Yeah, like a show.
Like it was just a show. It's kind of like the whole like, oh, we're gonna let them know we're gonna bomb.
Yeah,
the base.
yeah.
This whole thing was like, well, we're gonna let this impeachment thing go through to appease this certain demographic of people to show that we're actually doing something, but
we're
it's
not
just-
actually
it's-
doing
we're not
anything.
actually doing
Yeah.
anything. It just feels like everything has been like half-assed attempted, ill-attempted,
Yeah.
with a back-end agenda kind of behind.
Well, I don't even know what their agenda is because all they've done is made Trump's approval ratings go up.
Well, but that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like, I
like,
feel
that's
like,
all they've done.
Like
So, I mean,
they were
on the-
trying to say like they were trying to put him on a chopping block.
Yeah.
Or they were making it look. It was more like they were making it look like they were putting him on the chopping block to just get a different result. Like it seems like everything has just been this big psychology game to make you think one thing. It's like watching a magician. We're making this happen over here, but then this happens over
But what's
here.
what was their
Well, I mean, because
what was
there is a massive amount of people that are pissed
Yeah,
about
but-
his, the Ukraine thing specifically.
but the thing is that the massive amount of the problem is the massive amount of people who are pissed were the exact same amount of people that were already pissed.
That's true too.
So they didn't you know what I mean? Like so as a political strategy, they didn't turn anybody against Trump.
Right.
They didn't
Right.
because the numbers have just gone up. So it's like that failed.
Okay, so here.
So
okay,
if
would
that
it
was your
be-
plan, then that failed.
well, maybe their plan is to show that like Congress still has some clout. Like hey, well, like we can
impeach him.
We can impeach.
But the thing
and
is,
it just
you
was
have no.
trying to make Congress look like they had.
But it was all much to
relevancy.
do. It was all much to do about nothing because
Well, that's-
Congress, because the House, all the votes to get rid of him were Democrats,
Yeah.
and then in the Senate, all the votes to save him were Republican.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so what have we accomplished? Zero. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're back to square one. So
Yeah.
the Democrats, if you're thinking about that kind of stuff, then say, well, we've got our own leadership race going on, right? We got our own primaries going on. Why did we overshadow? Like, why are we doing anything to like take people's attention? So what did they end up with? They end up with like a shit primary
Yeah.
campaign. So then whoever's going to win, which right now looks like Bernie, but it's still early. Like it can change on a dime. It's like whoever wins is guaranteed to lose
Right.
the election next year, this year.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So that's all they've done. It's like,
Well, and like some of Trump's tweets here in this last little bit,
brutal,
unbelievable,
vicious, vicious.
But yeah, like I mean, he's I don't know,
the worst ever. Like that's
I
he'll
just
whatever happens, like it just. That's the problem. It's like whoever they pick, he's just gonna like give them some stupid nickname.
Yep. And it's over.
And then just run him into the ground and just
over.
pull him into the mud and then just that's it. Just pull him into the mud and then just like they're both in. It's just so obvious and it's so I don't know what they're doing. I don't because I always to even be in politics, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, but what is on this show? If you're going to be in politics, something's wrong with you to begin with. No, but really, like they're not normal people who enter into that life.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's corrupt. Everyone's taking money from somewhere. You don't make 100. Even our like.
Here it comes, folks.
No. But even the thing is, it's like I'm not going to explain. I'm not going to say who, but you're not making 150 grand a year, and then you're worth $12 million.
Yeah.
Or $20 million or $100 million. Like this. So the math doesn't add up. Even at the local level, some would say, Alberta level. Right. It's like, you were the president of a. I mean, you were the
subtle jab.
No, but it's like you were the. Like I'm not going to name names, but it's like, you were the mayor of a city of 800,000 people, and your salary was 130 grand a year. But why are you worth?
Yeah.
Oh,
20 million.
20 million. That's weird.
After you left office.
you know what I mean? It's like, so that happens.
Yep.
And you can and there's a certain amount of corruption that you can accept. Mm-hmm. So to me, if they're morally, if none of them have a moral high ground to stand on, then all you can do is look at politics like a game.
Yeah.
And say, okay, the game is to get elected. The game is to get reelected. The game is to hold on to seats, hold on to power, whatever. Well, if you break it down to that, the Democrats just suck balls at this game. You know what I mean? They just suck. Like, how do they? They're like a shitty sports team that can't do anything right. And so that's it's not a defense of Trump. He's a horrible human being. It's not that. It's a matter of just saying, well, how can you be so bad at this game?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as in our federal election with the Conservatives. It's like you went up against a guy his name was dragged through the mud for 6 months before the election started with scandal after scandal after scandal. You can't beat him.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what I mean? You put up a guy who's against gay marriage in 2020 or 2019. Nobody looks at these things. It's just nobody looks at these things.
Speaking of, just on the election front with the U.S., gay marriage and Buttigieg coming.
Yeah, it's like,
have you seen some of the footage of people that they've interviewed on the streets?
Yeah,
where they're like, "Oh, what do you think of Buttigieg? Oh, love him, love him." And it's like, "Oh, and what do you think about him being gay? He's gay.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't have.
Can't have that. Yeah."
And you're like, jeez,
because that's but again, it's it's not about what's right. It's about what's playing the game.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, in the United States of America, you're at this moment in history.
Yeah.
They're not going to elect a gay president. They just won't. It's sad. It's stupid, but it's the reality of it. They just won't at this juncture. There's too many votes.
Gotten past that
because not enough people have died. Not enough people have died. We have to wait longer.
Yeah.
We have to wait longer for that
to purge
that.
Yeah,
it is because you're not going to change those. A 65-year-old, you're not going to change their minds right now.
Right.
They're just not. And so you just
until that number moves, that shifts where the people that were born in a certain generation have moved on, and it's pretty wild.
And getting back to the game, I know we've come now. We've switched over to analyzing the primary candidates, but so they're not going to elect a gay guy, so that's out.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not going to elect a socialist,
right?
Because they're not there yet either. So if your two front runners, right now, the two front runners are completely unelectable by the average person.
Yeah.
what are you
What are
doing?
your options?
What are your
What's
options?
the point?
You know?
Yeah.
So that's
Now
where they're
now
at.
it's just reality TV.
Yeah,
It's just
like really,
entertainment.
it's just pure entertainment. Now it's just the Democrats do something stupid, and then Trump tweets exactly what somebody would be thinking without any filter whatsoever.
Oh, another massive thing that we didn't really talk about either is Australian fires.
Yeah. Oh, see. Oh no, but it was only for a while. What do you mean? There's still Australia's still burning?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't see that on my my feed lately.
It's weird how it's just hot topic, and then people get tired of it and they move on when it's still like, oh, that's still like it's still a disaster.
Yeah.
But it's weird how like in news or just the world, I guess just the world in general, not news, but world in general, how we go from topic to topic to topic for like a week or 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And then when it becomes irrelevant, we just move on with life.
Right.
And not thinking about, well, that's still going on over here.
Yeah.
And that's still a worldly issue.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like that fire is like
there's a continent on fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is like scary in itself.
Yeah.
But we just, and I mean, that's happened for hundreds of years already.
Yeah.
And the world just keeps turning.
Right.
Just keeps turning.
Yeah, because I mean, the human beings there's only there's a finite amount of sympathy and outrage and sort of that people are prepared to deal with. You know what I mean? And like for me, the like ultimate sort of example of it is like the text to donate. Like all these people text 7755 and send $20 to whatever it is this week.
Yeah.
And people and there's companies making like insane amounts of money.
Yeah.
Off of people's sort of like convenience outrage, where they're like, oh man, I did my part.
Yeah.
I'm going to forget about it in a week, but I did my part. I saved the koalas.
It's like, what pisses me off, I'm way off topic now, what pisses me off, something fierce right now, is when I show up to pick up my food from a takeout.
Yeah.
And they're asking me for a tip at the thing, right?
Yeah.
So like you go to pick up your food.
Yeah.
They hand you the machine, and it's a fast food takeout place. This is not a restaurant. It's a fast food takeout place. Even if it was a restaurant, why are you asking me for a tip?
Yeah.
Before I even
experience
I had to drive my ass down here. You should be paying me to come eat at your restaurant.
I agree that fast food shouldn't have a tip structure.
No.
I agree with that.
No, absolutely.
I agree with that.
Anyway, that's
that's
really grinds my gears.
That was a random aside.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, okay. So that we had fires, we had coronavirus. We've talked about impeachment. We've talked. Now let's get into some of the funky Alberta stuff that's been going on. And I want to talk about some good news though.
Yeah.
So there's a company right here in Alberta, Tevisol, that they had focused on developing a way of transporting lungs and doing transplants for lungs. And they just got requested to go to NASA and pitch at NASA in regards to using their technology towards long-term space travel.
Interesting.
Super interesting. Then we just talked to another organization not too long ago about they're using like an intelligence system for blood and blood pressure for the same. They've been asked by NASA. They've been getting some funding to twist some of their focus into where it can land when it comes to long-term space travel.
So
there's some really cool stuff. And then there was a lady just the other day that she was the longest female in space.
Yeah.
So she's just returned back to Earth. Yeah. Man, like there's some cool stuff starting to happen, and conversations, and not just conversations, but reality pushes towards this. And then you look at SpaceX and some of their massive breakthroughs in the last little while, getting that rocket back up there, back down, back up, back down. And now they're talking about pushing.
They're going to put a person.
They're going to put a person.
Yeah.
And I know you and I always talk about getting off this rock.
Yeah.
I feel like that's starting to become a bigger conversation and a bigger reality potential
Hopefully.
sooner than later,
Yeah.
which is
Well, I mean,
super
at least,
cool.
well, at least, I don't know where you go when
Well, I
you
mean,
get
'cause,
off
yeah,
of here, but
they're still talking about, well, we get it. I think their next one for NASA is trying to get someone on the moon again.
yeah,
And then
which is
just,
so,
I mean, it is
it's
weird,
just so,
but it's at least it's a step.
it's a step, but
And
it's
if
a
we
step
can
from,
get there
it's a
and
step
do
from 70
research
years
there,
ago.
I know.
Like,
But if
I
we
don't
can
know,
get
I
there
just
and
so
do the
weird.
research
Yeah.
to get us to the next level.
Yeah.
Like if we can get to the moon and be like, all right, shit, we got this figured out.
But they already
But
have
wha-
it figured
I-
out.
No,
or did they?
no.
Or did they?
Right?
I don't know. Like, but you know what I mean? But it's just,
Ooh,
no,
let's
we're
get
not going to
into
start
that.
that. No, we're not going to start that. But I understand why people are skeptical, because it just makes no sense. When you look at, I mean, I get it's all it's all like money, consumerism, like, consumer products drive harder than scientific, whatever. But it's just effed up that like we went from like having to like crank a phone
Oh, a phone.
to tell, you know what I mean? Like to call somebody,
Yeah.
to like having a supercomputer in your pocket.
Yeah.
And when they were cranking shit, they were putting people on the moon. And then now, we have a supercomputer in our pocket. Now they're like, now they're like, oh, well, maybe one day we'll get people on the moon. It's like, dude, what? This just doesn't make any sense.
I've never thought of it that way.
Like, what the hell happened? I should be able to go to the moon now. Like,
that way.
Think about it.
Okay, all right. Jesus, now you got me really thinking. Because, I mean, I have a bitch of a time getting a cell phone signal out of my basement.
Right.
And they were talking back and forth with Armstrong, like, there was no delay in real time.
Basically
all
real
right, this
time.
is what's it's like,
it's weird. Anyway, like, I think it happened, but it's weird. I can see
now
I can
I'm really
see
thinking,
how
I don't
people.
think it happened now.
We'll do some research over the next few weeks, and we'll do a podcast on it. But it's been done to death. It's been done to death. It's weird. That's all I'm saying. So I kind of feel like, what's the point?
Got me thinking again.
I kind of feel like, what's the point? Anyway.
I guess, like, to what end? Like, I guess, well, and then, like, the Space Force thing. Oh, that's something we got to talk about.
The Space Force?
And the logo. And
Okay.
How it looks
all
so
right,
much like
all
Star
right.
Trek.
No. Okay, hang on. That's debunked. I'm going
Oh,
to
is
cut
it
it right there.
debunked? What?
It is. Look at it.
Okay.
So, yes, it's similar, but in the 60s, the United States had a space command.
Okay.
And the Space Command had that similar logo. So for the United Federation of Planets and Star Trek, they took it was a riff on that. So it's kind of come full circle. So the United States came up with it.
Okay.
Star Trek was inspired by it,
Right.
and then now the United States is using it again. But you know what? Everybody can shut the F up, because if Neil deGrasse Tyson thinks that the Space Force makes sense,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because it does make
If
sense.
someone's going to think about it in a logic way.
In a
gonna be
logical
him.
way, because he explained it. He said he did the analogy of why the Air Force was created, because forever, even in World War I and World War II, for the most of World War II, the United States Army was the Air Force. Like, so it was under the United States
And the same
Army,
brand,
under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the training and the like tactics and the like strategic thinking, that's all different. So you can't have a guy who deals with jeeps and tanks
Yeah.
and troops to have to think about how
Planes.
to use planes, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. So now you can't really. Space is so different. The speeds they're talking about, like, the orbits, the calculations required, the materials required, everything. It's so different. Like, you can't have.
Yeah. The guy that's been working in this field for
it
this
just
long
won't
can't even fathom
right,
that.
Right. So it just
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Like, I
Right,
mean,
right,
and people are always like, well, they kind of, again, is like a cheap shot at Trump saying like, oh, well, he's so detached from reality that like he wants a space force. What are we going to be running around shooting lasers and stuff? It's like, no, it's just a branch of the military that deals with that problem.
Right.
It's like, if we had to shoot down a satellite,
Yeah.
how do you do it?
Yeah.
How do you go about it? If we have to protect our satellites, how do we go about that?
Right.
It's just like, so there's already, like, they already had all kinds of international, like, laws that you're not allowed, like it's against the sort of international law, it's against the, sort of the conventions of war to have a weapon installation in space, to shoot at something on the ground, right?
Yeah.
You have to, anything that hits the ground has to come from the ground, go up and come back down, like ballistic missiles, right? But then even again, Neil deGrasse Tyson said, he's like, do you know how useless something would be? Like a satellite that orbits in space to shoot something on the ground would be useless.
Right.
He says it'd be so useless compared to like being able to target something ballistically, because you can calculate where it's going to end up.
Right.
Whereas something traveling at 25,000 kilometers an hour circling the Earth, in orbit, what it's going to hit.
Yeah.
He's like, what's it going to hit? He's like,
well, the
impossible.
calculations would be completely different.
Well, and again, same thing. It's like, how do you protect something that's floating in the air that people know exactly where it's going to be every moment of the day because it's in orbit?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like,
it's not like that thing's like a jet.
Yeah, it can't move. So it's not like feasible to
Makes
like,
sense.
So the idea of them having like space bases and laser guns and all this stuff shooting down, at the ground, it's just kind of, it's not scientifically feasible. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So.
But trying to take care of like a threat from space, so
right?
Say like an asteroid or something like that. That is something that I think.
Or a communication satellite. Like, how do you protect your communicate? Like, because that's everything. Like, I mean, if they took out all the, I mean, now I honestly don't know the number, but it's in the thousands for GPS satellites.
Right.
Just thousands of them.
Yeah. Well, like there was, and I don't know how realistic these are, but there's like a render of space junk.
Oh yeah, it's like a cloud.
In the atmosphere.
Yeah. I've seen those.
And like it's a very interesting image.
Yeah.
And it's freaky because it's like, holy man, like how do we even see the sun sometimes?
Yeah.
Like it's just it's
that much.
There's so much stuff.
But the reason why is the distances.
Right.
Like, so the distances we're talking about, like, so so they were saying, so the lowest point on the Earth is the Marianas Trench, right?
Yeah.
And then the highest point is K2.
Yeah.
So that's an 11 kilometer swing.
Yeah. From
the lowest point on the planet Earth,
which is nothing,
into the highest point. And that's and they said if the Earth was reduced to the size of the size of a ball you could hold in your hand, it would still feel smooth.
Yeah.
It would still feel like glass smooth.
Like a marble, yeah.
So when you think about that, like, so even if you have this cloud of junk, like when you see at the International Space Station, then they would just be shredded to pieces by all this shit hitting them.
Yeah.
But the distances are, even when it looks like a cloud, the distances once you're in the cloud are so huge.
Yeah.
They don't even see anything.
Yeah.
It's just black, right? Like, it's just so crazy.
But the thing that changes that narrative is when you add speed to distance.
Right.
Right. It's like when like we were watching the Joe Rogan with the pilot that saw the Tic Tac.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Super cool podcast. But when he talks about like how far away, he's like, well, how far away are you from the object? And he's like, oh, like a kilometer or whatever. And he's like, well, that's like really far away. He's like, not when you're moving at like, like you said, like 2,500 kilometers an hour, right? Like it's everything's fast.
Yeah.
And like when you think of like the pilots, like when they do those ground sweeps when they're over the ground, like it's literally a hiccup and you're in the ground.
Yeah.
So it's
they have to think so far
fast,
they have to think so far ahead, right?
So when you look at like space junk, and if it's all moving, it would have to all be moving in a unison. Like it have to be all moving at the same speed, essentially, at those distances from each other.
I think
otherwise, because if one thing's slowed down just a kilometer an hour, everything else will smash into it, because it just, and I think that's using the rotation of the Earth and the gravitational pull to keep everything all in
where it is.
Where it is and equal and whatnot.
Well, I think a lot of it too, they said a lot of it gets pulled in by a lot of it does fall out of orbit, gets pulled in by the Earth, and then it just gets incinerated.
Right.
In the the friction of hitting the atmosphere.
That's wild to think about too. Like just that. There's so many crazy things. Yeah. You see in movies, like you see Iron Man re-enter the atmosphere, and he's burning up and blah blah, and you're just like, oh, that's cool, but That's real. Like that's what would happen if something entered our
Well,
atmosphere and lit up, right?
before they retired the shuttle, they would have to replace every ceramic tile
Yes.
on the shuttle after it so they re-enter it and land, and then they'd have to strip it because if even one tile was like cracked, it would
melt.
It would melt the whole thing. Yeah, it's so crazy. So I mean,
that's wild.
You know, I mean, it's a lot of things to space travel. Is a lot of there's a lot of shit to consider.
So even like for Musk to be doing like a reusable spacecraft is pretty cool.
It takes a lot. Like it takes a lot to to do that.
To get your head around.
I'm not going to volunteer to be one of his dudes, but
no. There's another podcast I want to check out, just out of curiosity. But the Joe Rogan interviews a guy that works for Musk or used to work for Musk.
Oh yeah, I forget his name.
Yeah, I don't remember. I haven't watched it yet, but it's like all about what it's like to work for Elon Musk, and I'd be like, I could bet that. I bet you that's interesting.
It is, but it's different because he thinks everybody's a believer.
Yeah.
Even the people in his factories.
Right.
So I think that's his problem. That's why he's having production, because you can't treat, somebody who says, I'm going to go work at a Tesla factory. It's not because they want to work for Tesla. It's because they need a factory job.
Yeah.
And you can't treat those people. So he's kind of saying, he's
the
like,
ideologies aren't there.
Yeah. So he's confused why somebody doesn't want to work 60 hours a week.
He's like, I do it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But that's kind of that's how he thinks.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean you don't want to work for $15 an hour, 60 hours a week until you pass out?
That's funny because I used to think like that.
Like you'd be confused why somebody wouldn't want to?
Yeah, wouldn't want to work.
Well, they don't have a stake in your what you're doing.
Yeah. When in my early days, I used to think like, well, like, no, you just work.
Yeah.
Like you just like if you want to get something done, like, but the thing is like they didn't want to get that done. They just wanted a paycheck.
Yeah.
And
because that's what, well, I mean, they
go drinking with their buddies.
Well, it's the inevitable reality. And in companies, I mean, now things are changing because the culture is changing.
Yeah.
But that feeling of like, don't companies realize, and even in my old, my past life, don't companies realize that like you wouldn't get up and deal with the shit that they give you unless you were getting paid properly.
Yep.
Like if you take people's money away, there's
no reason to get up anymore.
They're not going to come. Yeah. What? They don't believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Only you believe in what you're doing. Kind
of, especially when you're an entrepreneur. And it's interesting because like businesses always talk about, well, how do you align your employees' goals and whatnot with your company's values and stuff like that. And that's like a ever growing conversation now, especially now in the, like you were saying, like the generations are changing, but like we're getting into an era where the baby boomers are starting to leave.
Yes.
And now you're getting these, Gen Ys and whatnot to start coming up and taking these ranks.
Taking those positions. Yeah.
And massive leadership. And so what is that looking like?
Right.
And how is that going to change the business climate and where we are right now?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a neat couple of years. And they're talking like the next 5 to 6 years, these big changes are gonna be happening.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's gonna be really neat to see how this looks. And now if you're bringing on more people that are or individuals into leadership roles, like CEOs of companies that understand technology and its growth and its movement and are always on top of the latest and newest trends, that's going to be neat to see.
Yeah.
Because I think like we've been talking about the last, we went back to cranking the phone and to a supercomputer in your pocket now. We've always been getting faster and faster and faster, and the time between the next best thing has been getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So when you get people in positions of these massive companies and have the access to billions, if not trillions of dollars, and they understand the utilization of technology,
what does that look like?
What does that look like?
Yeah.
Are we going to get I think that's why I say when we're starting to have those conversations about getting into space and how we're going to do it and the research that needs to be done. And I feel like we're just in the baby step phases of that kind of thing. So once we get those little things figured out, that's going to speed up and shorten the time between the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, especially when the minds are more open.
Yeah. Like what happens when all the shareholders are dead? Like Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
right? It's like, well, Warren Buffett, a bunch of the other guys on the board. Well, when they die and you've got maybe a 40-year-old or 45-year-old who's grown
Who
up,
grew up with a cell
who
phone
grew
in
up
his
with a cell
pocket.
phone. Yeah, who grew up with a cell phone, who grew up with social media,
Yeah.
What does that look like? And then now they have access to, like you're saying, billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Where do they take the company? Where do they,
And where are their ideologies
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah.
Like when you look at a Musk, right? So like if does Musk have a kid?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't think he does. I've
don't
never
know.
heard him ever talk or anything.
Yeah.
But like, so say like a Musk, had a kid and raised him with the work ethic. Now, again, that goes 50-50. It could go the other way. But if that kid comes up underneath his dad and understands A, money, and understands B, the technology to get cool things happening, and he takes over dad's company, and dad's kind of laid the foundation for an even faster, more progressive, newer age that kid could bring to it, because he's had access to all that knowledge and technology. So like things like that, and like we talk about on Alberta Impact a little bit in regards to these people that are laying the books and laying the foundation right now for the younger generation have to be open to mentoring and being mentored at the same time, like this two-way mentorship. So like the big CEOs that don't understand social media and don't understand the latest and greatest technologies and the newest trends and things like that have to be open to having a younger mentor them. But that same younger person needs to be willing to be open to be mentored about. Maybe it's more about business ethics, because I think the business ethics from the olden days are better in some cases and in some ways than the business ethics that are coming forward.
Yeah, like I think they're experimenting still with what that looks like.
Yes.
And that's where you see missteps, and you see sort of like experiments that don't work, right? I think.
But we need to be experimenting, because you don't learn if you don't screw
you're right.
up,
You're right. You're right.
So we need to be learning. We need to take the chances on those experiments. We need to open up policies.
It's just, but the problem is in business, experiments cost you, Gillette lost $8 billion.
Yeah.
For stupid, for an experiment, like for a timed or potentially misexecuted
and that's mitigating
ad,
that's mitigating risk. I mean, like you can't throw caution to the wind, obviously, but you can definitely be like, okay, well,
or Hollywood,
if this works, it works. If it doesn't, we're going to lose this much. How do we minimize that loss if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
And so but if you don't do anything, we don't go anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So there's some really neat stuff. Now, what I was getting at earlier with Tevisol, and is there's some insane stuff happening out of here in Alberta and Canada that seem to be really looking at painting a picture for the world on where our future might be going, and I think that's super, super cool. And it's not that I think it just is. It's just it is.
It is cool.
It's amazing.
It kind of goes back to that spirit of innovation that the Canadarm.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, like kind of like being on the forefront, the Avro Arrow.
Yeah.
The before we kind of got a little bit stagnant.
And there's some massive credits that we always need to be reminded of our on achievements from Canada.
Yeah.
And like you said, like the Canadarm, the Avro Arrow, there's some really cool stuff that this country has done that just the world needs to remember. We need to remember ourselves to just be like, hey, we did that. If we can do that back when we were cranking phones,
exactly. Yeah, like
we can do the next next coolest thing, right?
Yeah, it's this is a good segue, I guess, into our railway system being shut down.
Yeah,
by all the protests.
What's the answer to that? I mean, you shut down the railways to stop this pipeline from going through.
Yeah, because in BC, the one band is demanding that the RCMP get off their their land where the pipelines, because the RCMP were brought in to basically make sure that this pipeline
Doesn't get sabotaged.
doesn't get because they were blocking entrances to work sites, they were
Yeah.
blocking highways, they're doing all this. So the RCMP were brought in to do that, and then now the sort of mass protests are telling the RCMP to basically get off the land. I can't pronounce it properly. The wetsuit.
Yeah, I've seen the words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
So, but it's so complicated. It's so messed up because there's like over 20 bands who are saying, no, we like want this to go through.
It gives
These
our people
people
work.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
they're saying these people don't speak for us, and we signed to get, so it's like, well, I mean, I think
it does seem to be a where the few are willing to put out the many to get their way, kind of thing,
yeah.
to a certain degree.
Well, I think that's the definition of like a protest is like, well, you're trying to like get the word out, right?
Yeah.
I just think that,
but they're doing some silly stuff.
well, it's silly, and
like there is
like the
there's been-
barricades of the railways. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. You know what I mean? They're like, well, where's the moral outrage for the indigenous people? Well, yeah, but how about you give them running water?
well,
like,
yeah,
start
and
there.
Like I don't.
Like start
When people are more concerned about causing an emotion as
Yes.
opposed to getting
something
results,
exactly, getting something
it's
finished.
there's a problem, and like
Yeah.
that and we go back to media on that kind of issue where it's like all they're there to do is just cause these emotions.
Well, because
And they're
emotions are
just
clicks,
stirring
right?
the
Emotions are
pot,
clicks.
as
Yeah.
opposed to, well, let's get some results. Let's
Yeah.
fix the problem. Let's
Yeah.
get this. Like I'm kind of at the point of, like, me personally, I'm just tired of hearing talk. I'm tired of these meetings. I'm tired of conversations.
Yeah.
Because we've had the same flipping meeting
Yes.
for the last 10 years, and you're like, okay, well, what's happened? It seems like every meeting that's been done and any thing that's been brought up from those meetings has just caused another compounding problem to the
Right.
problem.
Yeah, that's right. They just add layers,
Right.
like layers of
And I
everything.
think like we're at a stage in a lot of different categories where we have to stop trying to please everybody, and some hard decisions are going to need to be made.
yeah, because it's not sustainable.
Right. It's not. And at the rate that we're going, like if we're further back.
Yeah.
Like I feel like when we talk about supercomputers in our pockets, I feel we are so flipping far behind on where we could be because of the lack of just making the decision and getting it done.
Yeah.
Because of trying to please this guy, that guy, this girl, that girl, this guy, this kid, yada. It's like those 15 people are not what's going to get the world ahead tomorrow.
Right. Because to make a change to a complex system,
We need to be acceptable of sacrifices,
yeah.
and we need to be acceptable that people can adapt and individuals can adapt.
Yes. Yeah.
We have to make the decision for the masses, and if those masses outweigh the few need to learn to adapt. It's a shitty comment, but it's a reality comment. Like, it's a reality check. We really need to go as a species again. We really need to do a reality check.
Because they're always like,
We got
constantly.
serious.
We got so serious. but we promise we'll get back to the movies next week.
Yeah.
But we just need. But this is important.
Yeah.
We need to stop chopping ourselves up into little groups, little tribes.
Yes.
Little. You know what I mean? And start to like think about like, no, like, we're Canadians. We're North Americans, or whatever it is. It's like, how can you be ashamed of being part of like the freest, most progressive society on the planet?
Doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, are we, especially like, nobody's a fan of Jason Kenney, and
Well, some are.
Some
Well,
are.
he's
Yeah.
got his fan base.
He's got his fan base. But he said something really kind of simple and clear. And that was, if the world is consuming oil, it's our duty to make sure that oil comes from the most ethically sourced, cleanest, most progressive people on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's like a really true kind of like statement that I don't think anybody can argue with.
No, you can't argue with that.
And to say that, well, we don't like oil, so we should get out. You know, it's like,
well, like my when he says, like, you know, it's not that the world doesn't want our oil. It's just that we've set ourselves up.
We've decided that. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's, you know, love him or hate him.
Mm-hmm.
He some of his statements and you know, they're sound. Like, again, I don't understand the fight against common sense.
Yeah.
Like, if it's just common sense, it's like,
because
like
because some people find it just goes. I mean, it just goes back to like,
and we're out of time.
We're out of time. But the common sense isn't common anymore.
No.
And people put common sense before their like feelings, before their like thoughts
you know,
on something.
behind they put their feelings ahead of their common sense.
Yeah, they put feelings ahead of their common sense.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's just a matter of like, we could be, you know, we could be just fine.
Yeah.
And everybody could be doing their thing. But instead we're like you said, we're just screwing ourselves over.
We just keep getting in our own way.
You know, and it's like, until, you know, a plywood barricade in front of a 20,000 ton train doing 100 kilometers an hour, and there illegally, and the train is the one that has to stop,
Doesn't make sense.
Is sort of the perfect
Analogy.
encapsulation analogy
Yeah.
of like what the hell's going on right now.
Yeah.
And they need to like figure that shit out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for
That's
today.
it for today.
And this week, we will be back next week. Be sure to like and share. And if you have comments and you want to throw those in there,
we'll take it all.
Yeah, we'll take it all. Be constructive. You know, keep it. Try and throw your common sense in there. And I know some of the stuff that we say might not necessarily be on point, but the point is to have the discussion and hopefully maybe somebody come up with some good recommendations on solutions.
Maybe if somebody has a solution, that would be fantastic.
We can lobby that for you somehow and try and get it. Get some real change happening here. So awesome. All right, everybody, have a great weekend and enjoy Family Day.
Yeah, it's Valentine's Day today.
Valentine's Day today.
And Family Day
Monday. And so a bit of a long weekend. So relax. Don't think about.
Just turn your phone off.
Just turn your phone off.
Turn your phone off.
Turn your phone off.
Go on a date. Go on a date with whoever and hang out with your family on Family Day, and just
exactly.
Things will be better on Tuesday.
Done and done. All right. Have a good one.